Hi, everyone. How are you? So my name is Amy Scoville-Weaver. I'm a program manager with corporate engagement and strategic partnerships, and I hope you're all well during this complicated week. I've been at ASU about 3.5 years, and I currently work with our corporate engagement team to foster corporate relationships and help the overall corporate engagement activities here at ASU. And today I'll be talking about nurturing strategic partnerships, what that looks like from the corporate side, and also a little bit into the nonprofit side. And you might think, corporate engagement, what does that have to do with social embeddedness or social impact? And the truth is, quite a lot. So today I'll discuss what partnership looks like. I'll highlight a few corporate partnership examples, and I'll also give a nonprofit example. I'll work with Conservation International. And sorry, next slide, Kevin.
All right.
I'll also review some best practices about how we engage with industry and also some resources. At the end of our discussion today, you should be familiar with the ways ASU engages with private industry, the life cycle of a partnership that makes our partnership strategic, and feel equipped with the basic tools to engage companies in your own work. Before I drill down into exactly what we do and how we work with companies, I want us to think about what partnership looks like. So take a minute and think about who ASU partners with, where those partnerships live, and what those partnerships do. If you're like me, you've probably come up with quite a lot of answers. Who does ASU partner with? We partner with companies, with nonprofits, municipalities, and even global non-governmental organizations like USAID. Partnerships live all over the place. They can be very specific, one lab or even a single department, or they can be everywhere and institutional wide, like our relationship with Starbucks. And what do these partnerships do? Well, they do a lot. Some of our relationships are fairly straightforward and transactional. For example, we partner with companies so they can hire our students. Simple. Others are more comprehensive and strategic. But there is one prevailing theme. ASU is an enthusiastic partner. We believe in the power of partnership to advance research, drive innovation, and catalyze change. As you've no doubt seen throughout the conference, or you will see as the day goes on, ASU likes partnerships with impact. Kevin, next slide. Here are a few examples of how partners typically engage with ASU, which I'll go into further detail later on in the presentation, and I'll focus specifically on companies. As we go forward, I want you to think how each of these pathways for partnership helps achieve ASU's mission to be fundamentally responsible for the economic, social, cultural, and overall health of the communities we serve. First of all, what is corporate engagement at ASU? Next slide, Kevin. ASU corporate engagement and strategic partnerships is a unit within the enterprise that designs one-of-a-kind partnerships with organizations ranging from small business to industry giants. I like to think of us as having a dual purpose within the university. One, we're that concierge service. A company might come and ask, how can they work with ASU? Well, we help them get there. We also provide a concierge service to people within ASU itself, so to help people equip themselves to know how to work with companies. Our second role is that we foster strategic collaborations with companies that are considered of strategic importance to the university. And we have quite a lot of those. With those, we think about companies, perhaps they're regional, they could even be global and not be located here in Arizona, to think about ways they can engage ASU across a number of different offerings. What are our values? We're aggressively collaborative. We like collaboration. We don't exist in silos. We don't believe in them. We do believe in transparency through technology. And we represent the broadest ASU portfolio, which means that our job is to know everything that's going on at ASU and help connect companies to all the resources that we have on offer. So coming back to how companies, specifically the private sector, engages with ASU. And again, I want you to think about social impact and social embeddedness as we go through this. So how do companies engage with ASU? And what does that look like as a life cycle with a partner? So first, companies hire our students. This is often the first step for companies to engage with us. And this could look at a company working with us for internships, looking at resume books, full-time job placement, talent management, and alumni hires. companies want our students, and this is particularly true for companies that seek to have a social or environmental impact in the world. And that's because they know that ASU trains students to think about sustainability, social impact, and the way that those two go together to impact our community. Next, companies are interested in ASU for research and for licensing. That's because companies want our expertise, and they partner with us on corporate-sponsored research and other contract vehicles that enable them to access the knowledge we have and use it for their own work. They also license ASU technology. Next slide. Companies, and this might be the most obvious, but companies give money as a gift. And companies do this for a lot of reasons. They fund new programs, they endow faculty positions, they establish scholarships, they make capital investments, and they sponsor events or programs. You may have heard of the recent $30 million philanthropic investment from State Farm in order to help advance the Pathways for Future program. This is a gift that State Farm made to ASU, but the gift that they gave will directly influence their own workforce as they help to train our community to better meet the needs of the changing job market in the 21st century. Next slide. Companies also join advisory boards, and this can be at the enterprise level, so at the very, very top, at the school level, or at the department. Why do companies do this? They do this so they can influence the curriculum that influences how we train students who then go out into the world to work for the companies and have that impact. Next slide. Companies also connect with students. So they do this in a variety of ways, and you've probably heard about a few of them. The AVNet Social Innovation Hackathon is one great example. Companies want to access students to solve business case competitions, do career mixers, present in classrooms to get students excited about their companies so they'll want to be hired into their company later. They sponsor conferences, hackathons, and also work directly with student clubs so students can feel equipped to work with industry when they leave school. Companies also come to ASU to find solutions for their own business challenges. You may have heard of the idea of the university as the ivory tower. And what does that mean? That means the university exists simply to create knowledge and sort of inaccessible, high up pantheon of knowledge. That doesn't exist anymore, and especially doesn't exist for ASU. That's because ASU feels that the knowledge that we have within our university is directly useful and applicable to business challenges that businesses then use around the world to help spur economic and social development. For example, businesses work directly with us on consulting labs like the ones they have with Thunderbird, on capstones that students have to work on directly in their courses. And also we have different models for industry to engage directly with students to help solve pressing challenges. This includes practice labs, which is a model for industry and student engagement that matches students across disciplines to solve specialized needs of a corporate sponsor. For example, PepsiCo sponsored a practice lab to explore how robotics could help reduce the rate of injury for their warehouse workers. Finally, companies are interested in ASU to explore executive education for their own workforce. This includes certificates, such as the Certificate in Sustainability Strategy that the School of Sustainability leads, leadership programs, skill development courses, and non-degree programs that will help train their workforce. Actually, finally, companies are interested in real estate and economic development. Sorry, one more slide, Kevin. There you go. Co-location at ASU is critical for two reasons. One, it offers direct access to a talent pool here at ASU, and it offers an environment characterized by freedom of exploration that is virtually impossible within the confines of a big organization. You may have heard of Novus, the innovation corridor that we're currently building at Rural and Scottsdale Road. This is a place for companies to locate proximate to ASU and help engage with our campus. But what makes a partnership strategic? So I just discussed a lot of the more typical ways that we see companies engage with ASU. But what does that look like to actually create a comprehensive strategic partnership? Well, and here's an example. The trajectory isn't always linear, but it's typically how we approach building strategic partnerships. As you can see, many companies first partner with ASU because they are interested in our students. We like to think of this as the discovery phase. Companies are just getting to know ASU. They start off with the student. They maybe join a tiered sponsored group within career and professional development services, host a few career fairs, and get to know the caliber of students we have. From here, we work directly to think about what else could we offer a company? This could include serving on advisory boards so they can directly impact the curriculum their students that they're hiring or being taught. It could include gifting money, perhaps to scholarships, to create a more diverse student pool. And then from there, we think about what makes it going from a partnership, not just to connecting, to collaborative. So this is including research. So how could we engage a company in sponsored research? Could we think about business challenges that we could work with a company on to help meet some of their needs? And then from there, we're looking at really a comprehensive strategic partnership. And this is a partnership like Starbucks, which I'll review in a minute. These are partnerships that have C-suite level engagement, meaning the top leadership is engaged in their success. It also means that we've strategically aligned the work to meet institutional objectives. And that's because, and as you know, we're ASU, often these institutional objectives are designed to benefit society. So now I'll go into a few examples of corporate partnerships that have direct social impact. Everybody knows the ASU Starbucks example, and I hesitated to bring it in, but I think it's such a great example I couldn't not. So in 2014, Starbucks had about 170,000 baristas. They determined that about 60% had started college, but had not completed. So they set up a program that Starbucks would pay for their employees to get a degree at ASU via our online program, totally free, as long as that employee worked 20 hours a week or more. Now, over 200 degrees are offered, totally free to the student, with over 14,000 participants in the program. And we've also created a similar partnership with Uber. Starbucks is also another great example for a lot of reasons. So one, we're looking at, as I've already discussed, you're seeing that workforce development and executive education piece to their work. But that first initial step has also started other relationships we have with Starbucks. Starbucks opened up a Starbucks Technology Center that is co-located at ASU Skysong that directly matches students on campus to work with Starbucks to help solve operational challenges for Starbucks. Starbucks is also engaging with ASU on sustainability and how ASU can help Starbucks meet their sustainability goals. Another perfect example is our relationship with Adidas. So the ASU Adidas Center for Engagement Science began very recently, and it's a joint industry academic research center focused on understanding the cognitive, emotional, and physical processes that drive people towards or away objects, experiences, and stories. Ultimately, it's trying to understand what is sports' impact on society, and then how can we use that impact to better improve society and our surrounding environment. This is an example of a corporate partnership that utilizes our offices in research and licensing, and also connects our students to understand the importance of sport. Additionally, they have a joint hire here at ASU that helps streamline and foster that relationship. Finally, there's the ASU Smart City Cloud Innovation Center with Amazon Web Services. This is also an example of co-location. It's based at Skysong, right next to the Starbucks Technology Center. And this is an example of how Amazon Web Services is working with ASU and community partners to solve pressing community needs. So this center is part of a long-term collaboration that improves digital experiences for smart city designers, expands technology alternatives, and spurs economic and workforce development that between the public sector, the university, and the private sector to think about how we create communities nowadays. How do we create communities with technology? And what is that link to having a social good? So these are just 3 examples of strategic, comprehensive partnerships. So what you're seeing are partnerships with companies that have leveraged a lot of our offerings that we have at ASU. But I also want to give an example of one that is not a corporate partnership, but is a partnership that shows that is a great example of the life cycle of a partnership and the architecture that makes a partnership successful. And this is our partnership with Conservation International. So Conservation International is a global nonprofit organization that does pretty much what the title says. It helps conserve our global nature around the world. I've managed this partnership for over 3.5 years, began in September 2016, and I'm bringing it up because it really shows how partnerships change and adapt over time and the necessary components of a partnership. So first, it started at the unit level. It began at the Center for Biodiversity Outcomes, which is a small center within the School of Life Sciences and the School of Sustainability. And it started simply because a researcher knew another researcher at CI, and they thought this would be a great partnership to have. However, as it got going and we received some institutional investment, it became an institutional partnership because it aligned very closely with the new Global Futures Laboratory and this idea that ASU can really become a global leader in sustainability around the world. When we decided to start the Global Futures Laboratory, we looked at the partnerships that we had, and it was evident that Conservation International Partner was one such example that would help push ASU forwards. So it transitioned from a unit level to an institutional partner. It had an institutional relationship manager, as all comprehensive strategic partnerships do. That was me. It also established a governance structure. So what does that mean? That means that we knew exactly who to work with at CI, and CI, Conservation International, knew who to work with us in order to advance certain things. We had that C-suite level engagement where their CEO had engagement with Dr. Crow, and then we were also able to look at different ways that we could engage CI across the organization. We had different memorandums of understanding, so actual agreements to help advance multiple work streams, a co-developed strategic plan, joint hires, and as I mentioned, C-suite level engagement. So these are some examples of the architecture that goes into strategic partnerships that really take it from transactional, one-to-one offerings to something more comprehensive and integrally aligned to ASU's institutional goals. Next slide, Kevin. Another great thing that I love to highlight about this partnership is that it's an example of how partnerships with nonprofits can spur opportunities for corporate engagement, which I think is really suited to the group, to this conference today. So it's proof that partnerships aren't always one-to-one. They open up opportunities for future work. What do I mean by this? So in February of this year, Conservation International approached us because of our partnership with GreenBiz, which is a group dedicated to fostering corporate sustainability around the world. ASU is a membership partner with GreenBiz, and we help put on their conference every year. And that conference is around corporate social responsibility. It's attended by about 1,500 leading companies interested in sustainability. Conservation International wanted access to those companies because they're helping develop tools to help companies become more sustainable. And they asked us if we could host a joint reception and invite corporate attendees to learn more about how ASU and CI currently work together to make seafood more sustainable. And that's why the fish exists. So ASU and CI have worked for 3.5 years on corporate sustainability regarding seafood management, and how we can work with ocean communities to work on seafood. This is directly related to companies. And in fact, during the reception, we featured seafood brought by the company itself that helped work with us, that helped use our research to develop corporate sustainable seafood. It's a great example of networking, how CI saw a partnership that we already have with GreenBiz to use that as a leverage point to access more companies and help develop our partnership. This is also a great segue into the next and final part of my presentation, which is around best practices for managing partnerships. So as I mentioned, while companies differ from other partners, the base practices still apply. These best practices are geared towards corporate engagement, but can be used really for any partnership that you manage. So first, the do's of engagement. Use partner language. I mentioned hiring students. That's great. Companies might react more to accessing talent. Why? Because you're immediately pairing the word student with talent. Same thing with advisory boards. Map our route might be more appealing to a company than simply saying, sit on an advisory board. Connect with students, enhance your brand. Ultimately, you want to use the language of your partner. You also want to think from a partner perspective. Ask questions and understand the partner's specific landscape. Speak from an applied angle, not a theoretical one. That's important, especially for universities, as oftentimes we're thinking about research without actually thinking about how that research can be used. And understand the return on investment from the partner's perspective. What does success look like for the partner? Because what you might think as success is not always what the partner thinks is success. And be flexible and ready to pivot. Partnerships can adapt fast. This is especially true in the corporate sector. The corporate sector thinks about things in terms of fast responses and output and work product. And that might be different than what we're used to at the university space. You also want to manage the collaboration. Define expectation, goals, objectives, and a strategic plan. As I mentioned with the Conservation International partnership, it took us years to develop a joint strategic plan directly with Conservation International and ASU that helped both our institutions. So that's something that for a more comprehensive strategic partnership, you'll definitely want to have. Be aware project management and monitoring will be necessary, and identify a partner champion that will help remove roadblocks and navigate stakeholders. This one can be tricky, but what it means is to think about somebody within the company that really believes strongly in ASU and your mission and how you can work with them to help facilitate the partnership. As I mentioned, ASU is an enthusiastic university. Partners, especially the companies, leave campus visits very excited and with many ideas about how they might want to engage. It's your role to manage the expectations and direct those next steps, especially since there's so much going on here at ASU. You also want to think about utilizing ASU resources to help streamline your work. This is where we come in. And actually, Kevin, I'm sorry, you can go to the next couple slides. And the next one more. There you go. You want to utilize ASU resources to help streamline your work. So this is where we come in. So we can help your unit's corporate engagement and development staff can help you build a strategic relationship, but we can also offer guidance, particularly when it comes to the private sector, on who you should be going to and how you should help manage your partnership with the private sector. You want to utilize existing ASU resources like the Office for Research and Sponsored Projects Administration that can help facilitate non-disclosure agreements, which you might need, and review materials for compliance. You also want to work with ASU's Office of General Counsel with any service contracts and general negotiations. As I mentioned, Conservation International has multiple MOUs, and those have to go through specific offices. And you can also work with SkySong Innovations to negotiate and protect ASU's intellectual property, which I'll discuss more in a little bit. This is something that if you have questions, corporate engagement, our office can absolutely help you. You also want to think strategically about other value-added components. So remember the example about sustainable seafood with Conservation International? That was an example of us thinking strategically about how our one-to-one partnership can expand and go forwards, thinking about leveraging other partners. So remember, the deeper the relationship, the harder it is for the partner to walk away. You don't want to lose your partner unless it's not a great partnership, which maybe that would be okay. But typically we want to think about how can we make these partnerships more comprehensive, more strategic, and ultimately deeper. Leverage your resource, including other partners, and again, use us to help brainstorm potential engagement opportunities. Next slide, Kevin. There are also don'ts of engagement. So do not commit ASU resources without consulting the appropriate internal entities, including quoting budget numbers and pricing, negotiating intellectual property or budget terms, signing any agreements without ORSPA or Office of General Counsel's involvement, committing university property, or entering into a business or procurement relationship without consulting our financial office. And again, we can help you with any questions that you have. Do not forget to commercialize your work. This is a big one, I think, for us, is thinking about the reality that our concepts and our thoughts have intrinsic value and potential monetary value and should be treated as intellectual property. So that means don't just give away your ideas, your concepts to a partner, even if you really want them to partner with you. Think about how that could be reflected as intellectual property. Don't do work before signing an agreement, and make sure you submit any disclosures to SkySong Innovation if you're working probably with a corporate partner around a specific invention or technology. Next slide. Don't neglect to disclose any conflicts of interest. Again, this is probably more applicable to the corporate side, but ASU recognized that faculty employees are increasingly engaged with industry and are building complex relationships with private companies. ASU expects all employees to be real and alert to perceived financial conflicts of interest. And if you have any questions, there's a link to the conflict of interest policy, or again, ask our office. As I mentioned, you don't want to start work before a contract has been signed. And contract negotiations can be lengthy and sometimes fail to fully execute if terms and conditions cannot be agreed upon. That's rare, but it can happen. So do not start a project until an agreement has been signed by both sides. This ensures that you will not waste university resources and your own time and compensation. Finally, don't forget, university resources are here to help you. So we can help you design a corporate visit, assemble a pitch, research a company, and access any other information that we might have about companies and much more. So you simply need to ask us. As I mentioned, a few of the resources that we can offer include resources on our top strategic companies that we work with. This could include briefers that show how a company has worked with an industry. And also we have access to something called the Corporate Engagement Network. So this is a monthly network that meets usually over lunch, although we're still meeting now, but over Zoom, and you can bring your own lunch, at least until things resolve themselves. This meets every month to discuss strategies about how people work across the university with different companies and share information and build that trust in that community of people who are corporate facing in the university. So if you are corporate facing and you think you might be interested in joining that network, please let us know. So we also have our wonderful website, which offers a host of information about different ways you might engage with companies. And we have a brochure that you can absolutely give to companies, both a PDF and a print version, should you be meeting with them, so they can learn more about how to work with ASU. So next slide. So this is the end of the presentation, but I really want to think about it as a thought process to think about how private industry can A, lead to social impact and help make ASU a more socially embedded institution, but also how partnerships go from transactional to more strategic. I hope I've left you with a general understanding of how ASU works with companies, why companies want to engage ASU, and some best practices to guide you on your relationships with private industry. I'm going to open for questions, and please do say your name before you speak, although I do see some questions already put into the chat box. As this is corporate facing, I'd be really keen to hear your thoughts on the role of private industry in contributing to social engagement at ASU. Thank you. And Kevin, I'm seeing some chats. Should I read them out loud? Yes.
Yeah, feel free to read the chat and answer questions and kind of have at it.
Great. And we have 15 minutes for questions, which is exactly what I hoped we'd have. So that's perfect. So sorry, excuse me if I pronounce your name incorrectly. Livier Kantz asks, how do you determine the status of a partner, e.g. gold? That's a great example. That's a great question and something I didn't get into in my presentation. So one thing that we do as part of corporate engagement is tier companies around certain tiered structure. We tier companies around certain degrees of importance to the university. We color those tiers, platinum, gold, and silver. Understanding how, and those tiers are weighted. So there are a number of different variables that help us determine the status of a partner. That could be how much money a partner has already given us, i.e. the university. It could be aspirational. Perhaps we really, really want to work with a partner and there's C-suite level engagement. Maybe they haven't given so much money to us, but there's an aspect that we feel like there's an opportunity there to engage with them. That's definitely how they could come up perhaps to a gold or to a platinum, to a gold status. There are very few platinum partners. Those platinum partners are the ones that I've already mentioned. So that's Starbucks and Adidas, and also of course our partnership with the Mayo Clinic. Different variables could also be engagement with students and the amount of research that a company has done with ASU. Linvier, does that answer your question? She says, yes, thank you.
Any other questions? Feel free to either speak on Zoom. You can unmute yourself if you have any questions, or you can just drop them into the chat.
Yeah, and I have another question. And this is from Vera Von Essay. Again, excuse me if I've mispronounced your name. Good afternoon, Amy. I am not corporate facing, but I am wondering what strategies could be applied to thinking on a strategic level when engaging with a community-based organization member. That's another great question. So I think the strategies for thinking about partnerships at a strategic level could be the same. So how are you thinking about engaging with your organization already? Is it really one-to-one? Is it just faculty to faculty? Or are they an integral member of a community initiative that you're working on? Do you see them as potentially able to give revenue, either as a philanthropic gift to support whatever you're working on or initiative you're facing. And excuse me, I don't know what unit you're from. Happy to have more context if you'd like. But do you see the organization that you're working with as potentially a partner, either in investing in your work monetarily or even in kind? And then from there, I would also think about how open and how willing the partner is to engage. So it's great for ASU to be a really enthusiastic partner and come up with all these ideas and strategies. But ultimately, if the partner is not on board and there's not that internal willingness in the partner to engage, then the partnership will not succeed. So I'd also really think about, how invested is the partner, and what does success look like for the partner? And is that the same? And does that match your idea of success? Vera, is that helpful? Yes, thank you. Emma Bishosho. Oh, great. Thank you for telling me where you work, Emma. That's great. Hi, Amy. I work with the Public Service Academy. We engage with partners for internships, guest speakers for classes and conferences, and inviting groups into classes to present challenges for students to solve. When in the process do you suggest connecting with your office when wanting to build a deeper relationship? That's a great question, Emma. Thank you so much. I would say when you feel like you have questions about, or I would say whenever you feel like you might want to build that deeper relationship, it's always great to connect with us, and then we can just have a chat and see what your needs are and how we can help. Maybe we'll be able to help, or maybe you already have that deep relationship and you don't need us. I also say if you're seeing your engagement with these partners as potentially being more comprehensive. So as a partner, coming in for guest speaking, but have they indicated that they really want to work with ASU, maybe around a specific problem that they have, or are you seeing them really wanting to engage ASU in a more comprehensive way? I think then we can really think about, oh, great, here's a partner who maybe is just, guest speaking at a class, but really sees a need or sees a value in engaging more fully. I think then we could absolutely come in, help, equip you with an understanding of all the offerings that ASU has, maybe different models for engagement, and discuss further, maybe even tools and resources that we could help provide. Does that answer your question, Emma? Happy to meet with you whenever you'd like. She says, yes, thank you.
Hi, Amy, this is Elaine. I'm wondering if you could give us an example of a corporate partnerships life cycle similar to the example of Conservation International that you shared. Thank you.
Sure. Absolutely, yeah. So CI was a great example and most suited to me because I've managed it since its inception. But another great example is our relationship with Pepsi. So I mentioned that they sponsored a practice lab around robotics and how robotics could help reduce potential injury for their workforce in warehousing. The partnership with Pepsi came about through relationships. So Dr. Crow had a relationship with their chief with their chief research officer, who has since actually left the company. But he had a relationship with Pepsi, invited them to campus. You may or may not know that ASU has a contract with Coca-Cola. So we're at Coca-Cola campus, so you don't drink Pepsi products on campus. But Pepsi came anyway to ASU, had a tour and learned about all the different things that we have. And like most companies, were overwhelmed and excited about engaging with us. And they came away with a few different ideas. We mapped those ideas and then targeted a few specific areas of engagement that we felt might help kickstart and jump off the partnership. The first area of engagement was an idea for Pepsi to bring in some money to sponsor research. And we went ahead and matched that money to help Pepsi connect with our students and faculty around two business topics that they were interested in. One was around robotics, as I already mentioned, and another was actually on how to reduce their water use at their beverage plants, globally. Because Pepsi has two factories here in Phoenix, we were able to do tours of those factories. We have now, and that just for that research project, but then that research project tour helped spur more tours directly for classes to visit Pepsi factories understand how their engineering and models work to reduce water. And now we have these great relationships where classes are visiting Pepsi as part of their actual curriculum. They're learning more about how Pepsi works here, here in Phoenix. Pepsi has also asked us to work with them around sustainability, not just from that specific water reduction use, but also thinking about how we can work with them around watershed management, sustainability education, and it spurred this really wonderful collaborative relationship around these different topics. And hopefully we'll have Pepsi coming back to ASU to visit again, check in on how their projects are going, and continue to discuss how we can work with them around sustainability and now potentially robotics.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I think we have about 7 minutes. Great.
Questions? You think we're good?
I think we seem to be good. I want to thank everybody so much for coming. It's great to talk about how we engage with companies. And as I mentioned before, I think sometimes when we think about social impact and social embeddedness, we don't think about corporate relationships, but ASU absolutely does. It's central to our model for how we work with companies. And as we're seeing more and more, companies are thinking increasingly about the benefit they can have to society and their impact on society. So it's an opportunity for ASU to engage with them, and for also all of our different programs and programs and projects to think about how to engage businesses. So we're happy to help you.